be, what it won't be, what it is, what it was, what it shall be, what it won't be, what it can't be, what it never will be. What? This is the Yay or Nay podcast, the sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. Sorry for the rough intro there. I'm still getting used to this going live on the video, so my apologies for how we began the show there. A lot of stuff to talk about today. NBA playoff results, of course. Charles Barkley talking about he's not cheering for any super teams, and of course he's speaking about the Brooklyn Nets. The Bucks are back. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and we're going to talk about what some of the national guys are saying now. And then, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about super teams. Since Charles Barkley brought it up, it kind of does bring back the debate between Michael Jordan, LeBron James. I'll get into what I mean about that here in a few minutes. Right now, though, NBA results. Let's talk about that. So last night, Nets, Bucks. I indicated the Bucks are back. Bucks won 107-96. However, very important to note, the Bucks won the game, but Kyrie Irving went down, and with Kyrie Irving going down, that gave the Bucks a lot of opportunity without that offensive presence of Kyrie Irving. All right, and even with that being said, to me, not an impressive win, 107-96. Now, the national guys are trying to say otherwise. Oh, it's great. 2-2. Now the Bucks can have the opportunity, and they need to seize the moment. They have held the Nets below 100 points 2 games in a row. They need to keep that momentum moving into the next game, and I don't see how that's going to happen. Look, even with KD being the only one of the big three on the floor, okay, Steve Nash will have him prepared, okay? They're going to practice as if, because they know Kyrie Irving, James Harden are not going to be playing in Game 5. It has already been noted that they are not going to, in fact, be playing in the game. And with that being said, the Nets are going to practice accordingly. They're going home. They're going to have that electric energy of the crowd behind them, which they have not been able to enjoy over the last couple of games. And you're going to see Brooklyn win that game. Now, it might be a little ugly at times, but nobody's going to stop Kevin Durant. He's going to pull up jumpers all day long. He's not going to have to worry about crowding the middle. They're going to give him the ball outside the three-point arc. He's going to drive his way in, penetrate, pull up jumpers. I probably predict he's going to pull up for about 45 to 47. He's going to really have to show up in the next game, but I believe he will do it. And they're going to escape. You know, they're not going to run away with it like they did in Game 1 and Game 2. They're going to escape, but they're going to win, and they're going to take the lead, and then we'll see what happens with James Harden and Kyrie for Game number 6, which I believe will take place in Milwaukee. But I still believe the Nets are going to win the series. Now, in regards to winning the NBA championship, because that was one of the big, bold predictions that I did make, keep in mind, when I made the bold prediction, I did say, barring any serious injuries, the Nets are the NBA champs. Crown them now. It's over. But the injuries have taken place. James Harden, Kyrie Irving, both down, both out. It is making it a little interesting. It is going to make it a little tighter. The Nets are still going to get past the Bucks unless something happens to KD. I hardly doubt that's going to happen. So we are more than likely looking at, again, Brooklyn getting past the Bucks, moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. What's going to happen there? We'll have to wait and see, A, who their opponent's going to be, B, what kind of health is their opponent in, C, what kind of health are we looking at when we're talking about the Nets with Kyrie and James Harden. So, again, a lot of variables involved, a lot of things are moving as far as, you know, what's going to take place and how's this going to go down, but it has made it a little more exciting versus the runaway train that was the Brooklyn Nets. So, again, we'll have to wait and see how this whole thing goes down. Meanwhile, the other game that took place, Suns Nuggets. All right, so a couple of things. Number one, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because, again, Suns won. Keep in mind, as I've been saying, I am a Suns fan. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I am broadcasting from Phoenix, Arizona. And with that being said, Suns won. Glad they won. To me, again, not a real big impressive victory. 125-118. Suns are a full squad, a healthy squad, went against a depleted Denver Nuggets squad. They fought hard last night. Their star went out with a technical foul, which, FYI, when you look at it, and most guys would agree with me on the national side from what I heard so far today, it does not look like that was actually, in fact, a technical foul to get eliminated from the game. Two things. Number one, when you're talking about an NBA superstar, and I'm not really good at pronouncing his name, so that's why I'm not saying Joker's name, but when you're talking about an NBA superstar, you don't want to take an NBA superstar out of a game and, as a referee, determine who, in fact, is going to win the game. And in this case, end the series. So they shouldn't have did a T2 for reason number one. Joker didn't commit a T2 foul, number one. If you look at it in slow motion, which they did, they went to the sidelines, they looked at the monitors, they watched it over and over. They had a lot to discuss. Everybody else saw it. Most people would agree that it was not an egregious foul. Now, he did wind up ahead of time. He knew what he was going to do. A, he got all ball. B, he did, however, get the nose of the Suns player. We understand that. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't something that he meant to do. It did happen, so he should have been teed up, but he should not have been ejected. So again, he should have been teed up, but he should not have been ejected. So the fact that he was ejected was a mistake on the referee's part because, again, you never saw Michael Jordan or LeBron James get ejected for anything they ever did. And I can go down a serious list of superstars who created a lot of infractions during their time in the NBA playoffs, and they were never kicked out for the simple reason of that's not what you do to superstars. And the Joker being in a game, fighting for his life, trying to change the momentum. I heard the interview that he did after the game. I understand what he said. Again, he made a mistake, but he did get all ball, but he also got part of the face. So that gets you teed up, but he wasn't trying to injure anybody, and it didn't look like he was trying to injure anybody. And because he got all ball, to me, says, I understand why you're going to tee him up, but ejecting him was a bad move. Suns move on. Of course, the guys here locally are crowning the Suns as the NBA champs, saying that they're the best team in the NBA, number one offense in the playoffs, number one defense in the playoffs. Crown them now. There's nobody else who can compete against them. Looking at all the other teams, they're all injured. They're all depleted, whether you're talking about who's left in the Western Conference, whether you're talking about who's left in the Eastern Conference. It doesn't matter. Suns are healthy. Other teams are not. Crown them. Okay, couple of things wrong with those statements. Number one, I've never heard anybody get excited because all the other teams are injured that you possibly potentially can end up playing in the championship. Last time I checked, most fans want to see the best go up against the best. That's the reason why you have a playoffs. That's the reason why you have the championship. It's all about the best going up against the best to be the best, and you want your best going up against the best. However, these guys are like, oh, it just looks great. Crown them now. Nobody can play against them. They're the number one offense. They're the number one defense. Okay, again, this is what's wrong when I hear these guys talk about sports. I don't, again, know what their thought process is when they do their shows. I don't know what kind of show prep do when they do their shows. I don't know, what message it is they're trying to send when they're talking to the people that listen to them. But it's just a little off to me because, again, as a fan, you want to see the best go up against the best. That's the reason why people get so upset when all the superstars aren't in the playoffs, like all the people who were upset that LeBron and the Lakers are still not in, because they want to see the stars. They want to see the best. They want to see the best go up against the best. A lot of people would have preferred it if it would have been the Brooklyn Nets, healthy, of course, with Kyrie, with James Harden, going up against the Lakers. Right? That's what everybody would love to see. They would love to see Brooklyn against LA, right? New York, LA, Brooklyn, LA, people, Brooklyn, New York, they consider it one and the same. Not necessarily the people who live in New York, but again, most of the country. And they just want to see that Brooklyn, LA, they love the rivalry. You got nothing but the best and the biggest stars on both those teams. So they want to see the biggest and the best stars play in the NBA Finals. And a lot of people, a lot of analysts, they all believed it was going to be Brooklyn, LA. And again, you got a lot of people complaining because you don't have those stars in. So when you hear these local guys and they're all excited because all these other teams are injured, it's like, dude, do you understand what you're rooting for? Do you understand that that's not even winning a title? That's just being the team that was a little more durable, a little more healthy, and that's basically it. I mean, you're jumping up and down as if they accomplished something. Again, they're still talking about the Lakers as if they beat a perfectly healthy Laker team and they made this major accomplishment that nobody else could accomplish because nobody could have went up against the Lakers, beat the Lakers, and beat them in LA the way that the Suns beat the Lakers in LA. And what an achievement it was. And what an attribute to Chris Paul joining the Suns that it was. And, oh, don't even get me started on Chris Paul. That's the conversation we're going to have tomorrow. I've been regurgitating stuff in my mouth all day, listening to all these people talking about Chris Paul and how great he is. We're going to visit that tomorrow and have that discussion tomorrow. Make no mistake about it. But for today, we're not talking about that. We're talking about these guys wanting to crown the Suns and not being realistic. Again, and that's the difference between what I do and what they do. I'm more realistic. I'm going to tell you what is and what isn't versus these guys coming off and trying to tell you stuff that is not factual. Let's be factual. Fact number one. And I heard one guy say this today, so I was proud because he did rebut one of the national guys that I listened to today, and he spanked him pretty good with it. And it's the same thing that I'm going to say. I don't know why everybody's jumping up and down about the Suns and all excited about the Suns when, and keep in mind, I'm a Suns fan, when all they've done so far is beat two teams that are ranked lower than them, that had worse records than them in the regular season, so they're supposed to beat them. They had home court advantage, which gives you the advantage, and you're supposed to beat them, and you beat two teams that were injury depleted, missing a lot of players. So you weren't even going up against those teams at full strength. So you haven't really achieved anything yet. So slow your horses down, and let's wind it back a little bit because you haven't really achieved anything yet. You've beat up on a couple of teams that are missing players because of injuries, number one. And again, I'll say what I have been saying all along when it comes to the Lakers and how they love to give all these accolades to the Suns as if they should be given the championship trophy now because they beat the Lakers and they beat the Lakers in LA. When Anthony Davis was 100% healthy, Suns didn't beat the Lakers. They got beat by the Lakers. Only when Anthony Davis went down and was out did the Suns beat the Lakers. Let's think about that. Let's be a little more realistic. So what do you think would have happened if Anthony Davis would have remained healthy during the entire series? Do you really think the Suns would have won that series? Do you really think the Suns would have been able to walk all over the Lakers the way that they did with a healthy Anthony Davis and LeBron James on the court? Do you really think that the results that we are enjoying today would be the same results if Anthony Davis were there? I'm not saying don't be excited because the Suns won. As a Suns fan, I'm excited that they won. I'm just not willing to act as if they went in there and handled the Lakers at full strength and they're the best team with the best offense. It's easy to have the best offense and best defense when you're playing against two teams that are not at full strength. So they're not looking at this realistically. I don't understand what these guys are thinking when they speak about what happens in these series and these games. Number one offense, number one defense in the playoffs means absolutely nothing. Zero. When you're talking about going up against injury-depleted teams, okay, you should have the number one offense. You should have the number one defense. You're playing against injury-depleted teams. So, again, you should have the number one offense. You should have the number one defense. If you don't, shame on you. And, again, the win against Denver, considering Joker was ousted in, the third quarter, fourth quarter, whatever it was, but it was still kind of early when he was ousted. Considering that fact, that wasn't that impressive of a win last night. It wasn't. Look at the score. It wasn't that impressive. Okay, you won. I'm glad. I'm excited. But let's be more realistic. You beat two teams that are injury depleted. Let's see what happens in the Western Conference Finals, whether you battle the Jazz, who now are facing some injury issues, which could make it a little easier now for the Clippers to finish the comeback. Again, I think the Clippers would have come back anyway. I think even with a full-strength Utah Jazz, the Clippers are the better team, and the Clippers would, in fact, win that series. I did pick the Clippers to win that series, and Alexi, I was right. Alexi, I was wrong. So I'm not going to be surprised if the Clippers come back and pull this out. Hopefully, Utah can get some of their stars back, though. I would like to see it be, full strength against full strength. It's been great so far, but let's be realistic. The Clippers have been the better team in all 3 games so far. They barely lost games 1 and 2 against Utah with Utah at full strength. And yesterday, or not, when the Clippers beat the Jazz on Saturday, not yesterday, it was pretty resounding. And I think the Jazz are about to get another pounding from the Clippers. And again, I believe the Clippers are going to get past Utah, but whether it's Utah or whether it's the Clippers, whichever one of them goes against the Suns, now you're going to find out what the Suns are actually made of in the Western Conference playoffs. However, the one thing that will be advantageous to the Suns is the momentum that they're riding, right? They got a lot of momentum. They're riding a lot of momentum. So that is going to be a plus. A couple of minuses, all the days off. Typically, when you see a lot of teams, they get a big break before they go into a Western Conference Finals or even the NBA Finals. That ends up being something that hurts them. And it takes a while to get back into rhythm. And sometimes they don't. And a lot of times they don't. So this big layoff that they're going to have, I believe it's going to be 7 or 8 days. This big layoff that the Suns are enjoying right now could be something that actually hurts them in the playoffs as well. So, it might actually even it up. So what I'm saying is, with the fact that there's a layoff and that typically hurts the team that has the layoff, going against the team that's going to be injury depleted, if they end up battling Utah, that would even it up a little bit. And I would definitely be interested to see that series. But if they don't and they go up against the Clippers, who I believe are at full strength right now, then again, that just tells me we're going to find out what the Suns, in fact, are made of when they go up against the Clippers. But the Clippers, it's so hard with the Clippers, right? You don't know what team you're going to get from night A, night B. It really depends on Kawhi Leonard and how he's going to play and how he's going to perform. So there are a lot of questions in regards to the Clippers, their intensity, their focus. Does it take them to go down before they get focused? So far, it kind of looks that way. Again, there's going to be a lot of storylines, but either way, it's still going to be something that is going to be a series where the Suns are going to show you what they're made of, whether they battle Utah or whether they battle the Clippers. It will tell us a little more about this team. The whole Chris Paul scenario and the stuff that's being said today, we're going to definitely discuss that tomorrow. I don't want to get into that today because I want to get into this other stuff. So Charles Barkley made a comment, says he is not cheering for any super teams. Okay, he doesn't believe in any super teams. So he's not cheering for the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know how he feels now that Kyrie is down. James Harden also is down, and we don't know if those two are even going to come back for the playoffs at all, including the NBA Finals. I don't know how Charles feels about that. I haven't seen or heard anything in regards to that yet. But even though those guys are down, I don't think that changes Charles's perspective in regards to super teams. So he said a lot of other things. I'm not, a guy with a, high memory to be able to quote everything that Charles said. But one thing I can tell you is he said a lot of things in regards to basically super teams are something that pretty much shouldn't be formed, shouldn't be allowed, and you shouldn't necessarily respect these guys that go and play for the super teams to try and win an NBA title because it just makes it unfair to everybody else. Even though they don't always win, I mean, LeBron James didn't always win with his super team, but nonetheless, there's a lot of learning curve when you're just jumping in and trying to form a bunch of guys with a bunch of egos, and they're used to being the ball handler and the one who's making the last minute shots when the game's on the line. So you got a lot of egos and stuff you're battling. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but eventually they figure it out and eventually they win. The Heat won 2 out of 4. So, and to go to 4 is a lot, right? I mean, just to go to 4, that's a lot. Win 2 out of 4, it's only 50%, but that's not too bad when you were a team who wasn't doing anything before, right? So there's a lot to be said about forming a super team and what it can do and what kind of impact it can have on the rest of the league. But when Charles said that, it took me down a road that I didn't necessarily think about originally when I had my original discussion about LeBron and Michael Jordan. And what I'm talking about is this. So a lot of people have basically, first of all, answered a poll question in regards to whether they think super teams are good or bad. You can see the results on our Twitter page at Yay or Nay Podcast. But if I remember correctly, because I didn't look it up, so my fault. But if I remember correctly, most people did not like super teams. So they weren't necessarily in favor of the super teams. And there's a lot of reasons why people like them, and there's a lot of reasons why people don't like them. But the bottom line is, in the poll that I had, I believe it came back that they didn't like them. If I get that wrong, I apologize. But I believe the poll came back that the majority of people were not in favor of super teams. With that being said, LeBron James has always been forming super teams. He's leaving one organization to go to another organization with the objective of creating a super team. And the objective, of course, is to build that super team to win NBA titles, right? Okay. Now, let's think about that. So we've always had the big discussion about who is the greatest of all time. Is it Michael Jordan or is it LeBron James? That's always been the question that we've had. Who is the greatest of all time? And then I started to think about, okay, so we had this debate, and I told everybody what the yay or nay reasons were for the people that I talked to in forums and rideshare and things of that nature. But then I was like, okay, but the one thing I never really hit on was Michael Jordan didn't have a super team. And Michael Jordan won 6 titles, and he went 6-0 in the NBA Finals. And I just indicated to you that the guy who has been his whole career creating super teams went to the Miami Heat and went 2 for 4. That's just with the Miami Heat, okay? And then he won 1 in Cleveland, okay? But he created a super team in Miami, and they went 2 for 4. No super team for the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, and they went 6-0. Something to think about when you're having the greatest of all time discussion between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Now, I did hear a guy today. Now, he was a B-lister on a national show, but he was a B-lister. But nonetheless, I did hear a guy today try and say that there have always been super teams, and they've always been in existence. If you look at, Michael Jordan and the Bulls, they were a super team. If you look at Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics, they were a super team. No, they were not. And I'm going to get into why, but I'm going to give one more example that this B-lister guy gave. If you look at Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns, when they went to the NBA Finals, they were a super team. And again, no, they were not. They were role players, basketball teams, true to the name, basketball team, not one individual, not 2 superstar individuals with a bunch of role players like you're seeing today. They were true teams where everybody had a role, everybody had a position, everybody played their position, they played it to perfection, and they won. Huge difference between a super team and teams that had everybody in the right place, in the right position, with the right coach, and they won. Huge difference. Huge difference, right? Those guys didn't all get to request max contracts because they weren't all superstars. You had a bunch of B and C guys with like one A guy, and everybody was the best in their position, but they were a bunch of B and C guys with one A guy, but everybody knew their role, did it well, played it to perfection, and they were winners. When you talk about Larry Bird and the Celtics, Michael Jordan and the Bulls, Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns, which, by the way, never won a title, did well, but they had a bunch of players that played their positions, and they were the best at it, but there weren't a bunch of max contract guys there on the Suns. There weren't a bunch of max contract guys there on the Bulls. There weren't a bunch of max contract guys there on the Celtics. There are, however, on Brooklyn. There were and are, however, every time LeBron James goes and forms a new team. They're all max contract guys with a bunch of role players. In Brooklyn, you got a bunch of role players and a couple of max contract guys. Didn't have that with the Celtics. Didn't have that with the Bulls. Didn't have that with the Suns. And Michael Jordan went 6-0. How's LeBron doing? I think that pretty much ends the greatest of all time discussion, in my opinion. It's over. That right there solidifies it. Michael Jordan, greatest of all time. Now, for me, at least for me, the debate is over. There is no debate to be had. Michael Jordan, greatest of all time. Okay, So thank you to Charles for bringing up that perspective and making me think about that. Another thing I wanted to talk about are the Bucks. So again, I want to go back to that because you had a bunch of national guys talking about now the Bucks are back. Remember, these guys counted them out, said they were done. Now today they're praising Chris Middleton. Oh, he's playing so great. Oh, they're all shooting from the outside so great. And all I'm thinking is, man, these guys, they just keep going back and forth and changing their perspective and acting as if they didn't say anything negative yesterday and they've always been on this tip today. And it's just amazing to me. I don't know. I mean, it's just amazing to me. But the Bucks, are they back? No, I don't think so. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, the Nets are definitely going to win this series. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be as easy as it was once it began. But the reason I'm coming back to this now and discussing it now is because, again, the national guys are now talking about Chris Middleton and what a great player he is and how everybody seems to be woke. And, I'm a little confused, man. Giannis has found his game. He's doing what he's supposed to do. And yet they were all criticizing this guy, talking about how he was a liability in the fourth quarter. All you got to do is foul him. He can't make any free throws. And now all of a sudden he's the greatest thing in the world. I just, again, wanted to reiterate how crazy some of these national guys can be sometimes when they talk about sports, because I just don't understand where they get their thought process from. And it just drives me nuts sometimes. A couple of questions up on the yay or nay that I want to give you the results on for today. What I got back was this. The question is, should the NBA get rid of individual salary caps to break up super teams? Again, because of what Charles Barkley said, it made me think, hey, this would be a way for the NBA to get rid of super teams. So why not ask the fans what they think? So it came back 57% are in favor of getting rid of the individual salary cap to break up super teams. 57% of the people that voted. All right, now, the next question. This one is a conversation that we had, I believe it was yesterday in yesterday's show. Are the Dallas Cowboys still America's team? Okay, now, I did this poll twice. I believe if you remember what I talked about yesterday, I told you I did this poll twice. Yesterday, I gave you the result of poll number one, which was 100% of the people polled said, nay, the Cowboys are no longer America's team. And I was so surprised. I did the poll twice. And on the second time around, what we came up with was 83% said, nay, the Cowboys are not still America's team. So I guess it's pretty much the consensus is there. And I kind of felt it. I felt the vibe a little bit, which is what made me even have the discussion to begin with, in the conversations I had with people in rideshare and the forums that I go into and stuff like that. So 83% said no, the Cowboys are no longer America's team. So I don't know. Pretty crazy when I look at two different polls and both of them are negative on the Cowboys, yet the Cowboys still have the number one promoted brand in the NFL, and Dak Prescott is the number one promoted quarterback in the NFL. And it wouldn't matter whether it's Dak Prescott or whoever the Cowboys quarterback is. Whoever the Cowboys quarterback is, they're going to be the number one promoted quarterback in the NFL no matter what. And it's crazy to me because, again, it's like these guys don't have their ear to the ground and don't understand what the fans actually think when it comes to the Cowboys and other things as well. Because, there's the whole conversation about Aaron Rodgers and stuff like that. And we're probably going to get into that a little more tomorrow as well. But that's going to do it for today. Do not forget, I got a bunch of brand new questions for you on @YayOrNay podcast Twitter page, a bunch of brand new stories, as well as the videos that I am shooting here on Twitchy of the show are also going to be up on the @YayOrNay Facebook page. So you can go check those out. That's going to do it for today. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.